The Phantom Archives of Edgar the Architect, and Schale by Gen Kagami. Volume 7. Brno. The Transparent Cage. The Void of Villa Tugendhat. Untethered from the concept of time, the genius architect Edgar and the pearl-haired youth Schale wander through eternity, retaining their youthful, exquisite forms. Across eras, they traverse the world's renowned architectural works and the maddening constructs Edgar himself once assembled. This is a tranquil, decadent journey through phantom architecture, dissecting space, light, gravity, and the anomalies lurking within through cold, unflinching logic. 1. Moravian Light and the White Shirt. It was a morning of absolute transparency and brilliance. In Brno, the ancient capital of the Czech Republic, stands the Villa Tugendhat, Mies van der Rohe's masterpiece. In this gargantuan box of light, composed solely of steel and glass, with every shred of ornamentation stripped away, the two were leading a semblance of ordinary life. The colossal glass windows covering the living area from floor to ceiling had been completely lowered into the floor by an electric mechanism. The early summer breeze blowing from the garden flowed gently into the interior. "Hey Edgar, this house really feels as though there's no boundary between the inside and the out." Schale was curled up like a cat in a lounge chair, also designed by Mies, upholstered in vivid red leather. He wore nothing but a single, oversized white broadcloth shirt of high quality, a garment that rightfully belonged to Edgar. He had carelessly rolled up the sleeves and cast his bare feet out against the cold, chrome-plated steel tubing. In his hand, he held a glass of Moravian white wine, shimmering a pale gold as it caught the morning light. There was no heavy tweed here, nor any suffocating phantoms of the past. Only a quiet, vulnerable time flowed, as if he were wearing nothing but the light and the wind against his bare skin. 2. Structure and Grapes. Schale, though it is before noon, could you not compose your appearance a little more? The linear beauty of this space is being squandered by your slovenliness. From the stainless steel kitchen, the very pinnacle of functionalism, Edgar's quiet, definitive voice resonated. He too was without a jacket, dressed in slim black slacks and a plain white shirt. Upon the silver tray he held were thin slices of dark bread, white cheese from a local farm, and another chilled bottle of wine. "Oh, it's fine. No one is watching, and it's the fault of this house for being far too breezy. Besides, this wine is truly delicious." As Schale laughed without a hint of remorse, Edgar placed the tray upon the dining table of beautifully grained Macassar ebony. He then silently took the glass from Schale's hand, inspecting its colour and aroma with a touch of chill. A South Moravian Riesling. Not bad. The minerals brought by the calcareous soil of this region have forged a structure as robust as the steel frame of a building. Edgar tilted the glass, took a sip, and then adopted that same cruel, intellectual gaze he used when critiquing architecture. However, the temperature control during fermentation was somewhat lax. The details of the acidity have loosened slightly against the external disturbance of the climate. Compared to the perfect detail of Mies's glass joinery, I must say it tastes rather coarse. As usual, you praise wine like an architect. I like it though, this slightly loose feeling. Giggling, Schale stood and walked barefoot across the marble floor toward the dining table. The inevitability of the manufacturing process determines the final beauty. Architecture and wine are the same in that regard. Now, sit. Before the cheese grows warm. Edgar poured wine into his own glass and the two sat facing each other across the ebony table. Behind them, a massive wall of monolithic onyx shimmered quietly in the morning light. The quiet, decadent brunch of the ghosts who lived for eternity was about to begin. 3. Return on the slope and steel details. Late in the afternoon, having finished some modest shopping in the city of Brno, the two were ascending the gentle slope leading to the quiet residential district. Schale carried a single paper bag in his arms, containing vivid fruits found at the city market, and several newly acquired bottles of wine. He had changed from his vulnerable morning appearance, now wearing a light spring coat with a scarf loosely wound around his neck. Reaching the front entrance of the Villa Tugendhat on the uppermost floor, which faces the road along the slope, Edgar suddenly paused. His quiet gaze was fixed upon the steel handrail leading to the entrance of milk-white glass. "Look at this, Schale, the junction of this handrail." Edgar softly traced the smooth curve of the steel with a long finger, having removed his soft leather glove. The welding marks had been completely polished away. It possesses neither a millimetre of error nor even a seam, as if it were born into this shape from the very beginning. God is in the details. Mises' perfectionism, which one might call madness, is condensed into this single length of steel. Truly, it's cold, yet it possesses a somehow soft touch. Schale stood beside him, softly touching the ultimate skin of the metal. Because all ornamentation had been stripped away, the supreme beauty inherent in the material itself stood out. For a while they remained speechless, savouring the serene detail. 4. The arc of stairs and the winter garden. They opened the entrance door inset with frosted glass and entered the residence. From the roadside, the house appeared to be a single-storey structure, but a gargantuan living space unfolded on the floors below, following the descent of the slope. The two quietly descended the stairs, which described a beautiful arc enveloped by milk-white glass walls. Reaching the vast living area, Schale placed the paper bag upon the ebony dining table with a soft thud and exhaled a small breath. "Just walking a little makes me feel a very human sense of fatigue. I smell the green." Schale's gaze was drawn toward the winter garden at the back of the living area, partitioned by glass. There, several pots of tropical plants spread their verdant leaves. Schale opened the sliding glass door and stepped inside, softly trailing his wax-white fingertips along the underside of a large monstera leaf. To enclose nature life within a box of inorganic steel and glass. Perhaps Mies was more of a lonely soul than one might think. Who can say? To him, perhaps even the organic curves of these plants were merely calculated ornamentation to highlight the linearity of his own space. From the centre of the living area, Edgar quietly watched Schale's back as he played with the greenery. V. The motor sound of dusk. Before long, a cold wind characteristic of twilight began to blow in through the gargantuan windows left wide open. Schale's slender shoulders shivered slightly. "It's grown a bit chilly." Edgar walked to the wall and quietly pressed a button. A low, heavy humming of a motor whir echoed through the space. Then the massive glass windows that had been stored beneath the floor began to rise slowly, yet with certain power. The boundary that had connected the garden and the interior was being partitioned once more by a single, gargantuan, transparent wall. With a faint clink, the windows closed completely. The sound of the wind was cut off, and the residence regained its perfect silence. As a transparent cage, though the view outside remained as it was, the temperature and the air of the space shifted into something protected. This is better. It would be troublesome if you were to catch a cold. Edgar released his hand from the motor switch and quietly looked down at the Brno cityscape as twilight approached through the gargantuan glass. 6. Flicker of slumber. After the glass windows were closed and the residence became a complete, transparent cage, the two sat upon the sofa in the living area as they peeled the vivid fruits Schale had bought and tilted glasses of. Palava, a wine with a characteristic floral aroma. The world outside the window had completely submerged into a deep indigo night. Only the onyx wall flickered eerily, caught in the interior's indirect lighting. Suddenly the air in the room trembled. Flicker, the overhead lights blinked, and the low hum of the air conditioning that filled the residence cut out unnaturally. Absolute silence, followed by abrupt darkness. It is coming, Schale. The architecture has begun to dream of us. Within the darkness, Edgar's quiet, definitive voice resonated. He placed his glass upon the table and stood without hesitation, even in a vision not yet adapted to the dark. Honestly, even though we are finally on holiday, this box has a rather restless way of sleeping. It is the reaction to an overly perfect rationality. The more a heart is like clockwork, the more it tends to see strange dreams at the slightest provocation. Edgar took Schale's hand and headed further down the arc of stairs submerged in darkness. Their goal was the massive underground machine room that governed the respiration of this residence, a space where the scent of cold concrete and a faint aroma of ozone drifted. 7. Iron veins and the customary requiem. Reaching the deepest part of the basement, where the distribution board was installed, a strange sight unfolded. The groups of thick black cables, which should have been neatly arranged, were undulating and writhing upon the wall like several serpents with a will of their own, or the veins of a struggling creature. Between the crawling cables, pale blue sparks gave off eerie, crackling birth cries. It seems to be quite delirious with fever, but compared to the fires of Notre Dame, this is nothing more than a baby's tantrum. Edgar spoke chillily, and without hesitation reached into the writhing mass of cables. He brushed away the wiring that attempted to coil around his wrist with a sharp "ha!", handling them with a dexterity that was almost violent. He then seized the main breaker lever in the centre of the board, pulled it down without a second thought, and then slammed it back up with vigour. A heavy metallic clank echoed through the cellar. With that single blow, the writhing cables lost their strength and returned to being mere inorganic industrial products. Simultaneously, the electric lights overhead buzzed back to life, and the gentle bloodline of the motor returned once more to the entire residence. There, that is better. It was merely talking in its sleep, Schale. It has returned to its slumber. Edgar lightly brushed the dust from his hands and turned back as if nothing had happened. His face had regained its usual quiet and cool expression. 8. The night terrace and the edge of sleep. After a curtain fall that was almost too abrupt to be called an abnormality, the two returned to the living area. Schale opened the electric window just a fraction to let in the night air. Beyond the glass lay the vast gardens of the Villa Tugendhat, and beyond that, the black forest of the Brno Park. I've grown terribly sleepy for some reason. Schale sank deep into the sofa, staring into the darkness outside with drowsy eyes. The intoxication of the wine, the silence of a space stripped of all waste to the extreme, and the sense of relief from overcoming a minor incident brought a pleasant fatigue to his fragile, deathless spirit. Then sleep. Here, Neither the phantoms of the past nor the ends of time will chase you. Edgar stepped close and softly draped the spring coat which had been sliding from Schale's shoulder back over him like a blanket. "Aren't you going to sleep, Edgar? I think I shall stay awake just a little longer to savour this perfect silence." "Good night, Schale." Listening to Edgar's quiet, gentle voice, Schale slowly closed his eyes. The sound of insects and the faintly swaying shadows of the plants in the winter garden for the two travellers wandering through eternal time. It was a night of true rest, visited upon them for the first time in a very long while. End of Volume 7.